right. We have with us today Micah Dank. He has been spreading astrotheology, visiting numerous channels. If you want to find out more of his other videos, if you just type in Micah Dank, you'll see it in the video on YouTube. You can come across other interviews that he's done. He does a great job of pointing out astrotheology within not just the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures. He's gone into the Quran most recently, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Micah?
Yeah, correct. I've also done the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Code of Hammurabi, the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
My boy is just tearing apart. The Book of Enoch, I heard as well.
Yes, I've done the Book of Enoch.
And then he is a prolific writer of fiction where he interweaves this astrotheological symbolism into a series of books, if I'm not mistaken, and it is called Into the Rabbit Hole.
Correct.
And
that's what it basically is. You go down a bunch of rabbit holes.
It sure is. And you could find his books on Amazon, and from what I just gathered from listening to some of his other videos, people still email you for a digital copy, and do you do that, or what's the best way to buy?
I sell unlocked digital copies, which means they're slightly more expensive than Kindle, but the benefit of it is that once you have them, they're yours. You can share them all you want. And I have 6 books that are out right now, but if you get the digital, you get the 7th one too, which comes out in a month and a half.
Get out of here. You are writing up a storm. You went to school for authoring, creative writing, or literature?
Yes, I have an English degree, but I wasn't using it. I was in logistics for 14 years.
Logistics?
And I was in logistics for 14 years. It was just when I discovered astrotheology, that's kind of when I decided I was going to take a stab at writing. My first book was like a 2-year project, but then after the first book, I started taking more chances in writing. And it was just much easier at that point for me, and it just started to flow, and now it won't stop flowing.
Good for you. I was majoring in creative writing, and I dropped it to a minor to graduate before I was 50. And I edit myself so heavily that I just discard everything. I always start from page 1 over and over again. I need to get over being too overly critical. I have Mars and Virgo. It's a tough. What's your birthday? What's your sun sign? You know?
I'm a Libra. I'm a cusp Virgo.
Oh.
So I'm a Libra sun. Nice. I'm a Taurus moon, and I'm an Aquarius rising.
You're an Aquarius rising. That's the name of the book I'm working on. Actually, is Aquarius Rising.
Nice.
So you think that we have stepped into the Aquarian age already, from what I gathered?
Well, it's real simple. It's real simple to figure that out. I mean,
I know it doesn't happen overnight. It's like a cusp thing, is what we're kind of going into.
Right. Like we're the same thing. How we have like in astrology, you have 3 deacons in each sign. That's why the church is a deacon. There's 4 cardinal signs. That's why you guys have cardinals in the church. It's all astrotheology. But you have 3 deacons, and some of them are called handover dates. They're dates that one hand hands over to another, and they do that in the age, the precession of the equinoxes. They do that too, but it's a little slower. But what you do is you go to the meridian, you go to the equator, and you look at the sun rising in the east. You see the sign behind it, and that's the sign we're in. It's real simple.
If we go to the equator, that's what the constellation would be. Aquarian
would be behind the sun. The sun rises
at what time? At the spring equinox.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I would have to say that the advent of the internet is a very Aquarian thing. I mean, if that's not like a marker, I'm not sure what else could be, unless us completely turning into robots, like transferring our consciousness.
Right. Well, that's what happens in the age of Aquarius, because in the age of Taurus, you had the Egyptians, and they came out with all their stuff. And then after the age of Taurus left, we began the age of Aries. The Egyptians sort of fell off. right? The population fell off; they were not so much talked about anymore. And then in Aries, you have the Jews. Okay, and during the age of Taurus, you have the bull, the sun between the bull's horns in most of the hieroglyphs.
I think
And
that was a symbol for the goddess Hathor, and I think
right, but it's still the sun with the bull.
I think it's Taurus. Yeah, Taurus.
Taurus, yeah. And then in the age of Aries, you have the Jews, who are the people of Aries. That's why they blow the ram's horn during the holidays, the high holy days.
Yeah, that's the lamb's blood for the Passover as we pass over from Pisces into Aries every
The
year.
lamb shank bone on the lamb shank bone on the Passover plate, yeah. And then they start to fade, right? And then the Christians come up with their Bible, and they're the age of Pisces, and that's why Jesus feeds the masses with 2 fish.
So you think that Libra is the wine press? You relate Libra to wine and not Virgo?
Yes. No, Libra is the wine press.
See, I relate whenever references to wine as Virgo because the first miracle that we have the apostles go to Mary and ask for the wine to be turned out of the water. I think that's reference to Virgo.
Right, but I've explained the water into wine. Have you heard me explain it before?
I don't think so.
So water into wine, it's a process. It's not a parlor trick that happens in the Bible that Jesus does. What happens is the reason God is considered a man and Mother Earth is considered a woman for all times has to do with God's sacred fluid, the rain.
See, in ancient Egypt, we have Geb and Nuit. Geb is the earth, and it's a male in that particular metaphor or religious myth.
Well, they borrow from each other, and then sometimes they invert it. Like, for example, you can also know that the Egyptians venerated cats, all right? The Egyptians venerated cats, and yet there's not one single mention of the cat in the New or the Old Testament.
The word venerated comes from Venus?
Yep.
We just started throwing stuff back and forth. I never get a chance to talk to any other astrotheologians. You have a working relationship with Santos Bonacci and Jordan Maxwell. You said you speak occasionally.
I'm very Jordan's not doing too hot.
He's getting up
there.
But
I do try. He's 81 now, and he just had a stroke. And I have his number, and I do FaceTime him. I try to FaceTime him once a week and just see how he's doing.
Oh, that's really
nice.
But
he's getting to the point right now where he doesn't even recognize me anymore. He doesn't know who's what. He's slipping.
Yeah,
which is really funny.
Yeah, I owe him a lot of being introduced to astrotheology from him, Robert Maxwell, and Santos Bonacci. Those two really were instrumental. And then
me too, 100%.
It's like they gave me the key, and then I just kept on digging in, and it seems like
exactly
you did something similar too. Yeah, it was pretty earth shattering for me. I went to become a priest, worked in the church. I stopped working in the church, and I was actually DJing, and I started studying just astrology on my own. I always thought there was something to it, and then when I came across Santos Bonacci and everything, that was just, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is mostly astral symbolism for metaphors and not historical.
Right.
And so after coming to that knowledge, I'm like, well, who came up with this and what was the reason why they came up with Christianity? And then trying to find the origin, the roots of Judaism, which is doing history is tough because we're not there and we're just they've done such a good job at totally burying the actual. If we think fake news is something new now, I mean, what we've got handed down to us is purposely handed down to us.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting too because in the Old Testament, right, they're talking about in the book of Exodus, you're talking about Moses leaving and leading everybody out of Egypt, right? The Egyptians kept meticulous records. Okay,
no mention of it.
They even kept meticulous records of stuff that was unflattering to them.
Yeah.
They kept their negative stuff, not like us where we whitewash everything.
Yeah.
like the State of the Union tonight, which is just going to be one giant hand job for Joe Biden. But basically, there's no mention of the pyramids. There's no mention of the Sphinx. There's zero mention of the Jews leaving Egypt. Zero in any of their records.
If anything, perhaps the Hyksos or the Sea Peoples. Yeah, I'm trying to find the origin of. I think they were just a Canaanite kind of.
They were Phoenician Canaanites. That's what
Phoenicians,
Phoenician Canaanites. That's what they were. Yeah, and in fact, they weren't even monotheistic to begin with. Do you know how many fertility gods they've dug up in Israel that date back to the time period that the Bible was written? They weren't even monotheistic at the time. In fact, from what I gather, the first monotheistic was in Egypt. I think it was Thutmose.
Oh, Akhenaten.
I might be wrong on that.
Or Atum.
Akhenaten, that's it. Akhenaten. Yeah, Akhenaten started monotheism. Yeah, it wasn't the Abrahamic religions.
You know, there's a theory that Moses is actually Akhenaten. I came across a book on it. And he got kicked out by because he tried to install his own kind of worship, and then when the old priest came to power, they kicked him out.
Right. But you got to remember too is that none of this stuff is literal. These characters didn't exist. Like you wouldn't read the Epic of Gilgamesh. You wouldn't read the Odyssey, the Iliad, and you wouldn't read Dante's Inferno and think that these people were legitimate people, real people. 99% of the characters don't exist. They're just names. It's made up of a story. You wouldn't take that literal.
Yeah, I think no Solomon, no David, no kings. I think eventually, somewhere down the line, they did start having actual kings of Judea, but they were minuscule or always a vassal state.
Well, Peter never existed. Peter is Pisces. Did I explain that to you?
Jupiter. Jupiter's a ruler of Pisces traditionally.
Yeah, Jupiter's a ruler of Pisces. Yeah, and yet in the Catholic Church, they claim him as the first pope.
In Judaism, they celebrate him as a rabbi who created a religion based around the Jewish God. And what happened was, as everybody went to Christianity in Rome, and that means Greeks as well, that they all abandoned their ancestral gods and worshipped ultimately Yahweh, a Jewish God, and a Jewish superhero man as their god. And then when Christianity became the official religion, the Empire of Rome collapsed shortly after. It was a subvertive move to create Christianity to conquer the Gentiles ultimately.
Right, absolutely. But you do realize that Rome never fell, right?
Oh, really? You think it just moved on to... the church kind of kept it alive through Germany. They had the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, then we have...
There's theories right now that everything is, which I'm talking about in my 8th book, that the ancient Roman Empire, it spread because now you have the Swiss Guard that guards the church. So the financials go through Switzerland, which is why they always stay neutral, okay, because it's to their benefit. And the other thing too is that it goes back to Greenland. They say that these ancient Romans ended up ruling from Greenland. That's why for a brief period of time, it's called the Greenland Theory. That's why for a brief period of time, when Trump tried to buy Greenland and everyone just shit on him about it, I think he knew what he was talking about.
I forgot about that.
I think he knew what he was talking about. So this is called the Greenland Theory. Look it up. It basically says that it moved. And there's plenty of examples and there's plenty of information that backs it up. And I'm going to sort of tie that into my 8th book a little bit.
I see as a major threat to the future of freaking humanity is really Zionism and the state of Israel. And their prophecy is that they will rule from Jerusalem. All the nations will be under their foot. It's their seventh. It's the Aquarian age is their messianic age, is when the Moshiach returns, and there has to be this Armageddon war. And then these Christian Zionists are on board for it because they think that Jesus is going to return, who was a fictional character made up in the first place. So
But have you ever gone to like backtojerusalem.com? They talk about the one world religion being held out of Jerusalem now. You got the
Yeah,
World Economic Forum that's kind of pushing that thing right there. And you're absolutely right, is that the Christians do push Zionism. Um, I've got some Jewish relatives in Israel, so I'm not talking. When I talk about religion in this, I don't talk about the Jews or the Catholics or the Christians, poor people who are just mentally people who are just trying to get answers. You
and
know,
lots of them good
I have no
people.
beef with any of them. My beef is with the religion. My beef is with the religion across the board. And yeah, they talk about that. But you got to understand is that the age of Pisces is over, and the church knows that. You know, we're just two people. You know, we're just two people on the east coast of America who figured some stuff out. You're telling me that at the top level, the Black Pope and like Pope Francis, the first Jesuit Pope, doesn't know what the real deal is? You're telling me that people don't understand that it's an astrotheology book among seven other studies?
And propaganda from the state, those in power. I mean,
Right,
I just what I'm really coming to. It's see, I have Jewish best friends. I have Jewish
right,
family. I have a
right.
great love for many Jewish people, but I do see in Orthodoxy, especially this one group, Chabad Lubavitch, and
Yeah.
and they're very anti-Gentile. I mean, it's in the scriptures, and then some people are like, oh well, that was before Jesus. That was the Old Testament when God was
Well,
dead.
that's what Christianity is. When they talk about tattoos and eating pork and all of this, the Christians say that Jesus' new covenant with his shedding of the blood
A blood
kind of
sacrifice,
made
a
it
blood magic
the blood
ritual.
the blood magic ritual. Yeah, it got rid of the need to make animal sacrifices, and it sort of put God's Old Testament law on the back burner, where Jesus has the new laws. That's basically what it is. That's how they rational themselves to get biblical tattoos.
And then what the whole Jesus story is a human sacrifice that is in reference to the blood atonement scapegoat ritual of the Old
Right,
Testament. So you have two goats. You let one goat free, Jesus Barabbas, and then you
right,
take the other goat, you cast your sins upon that goat, put it up a hill, up a mount, in reference to Capricorn, the mountain goat,
yeah,
and then throw it off. And that represents a sacrifice to Azazel, who I believe is Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn. I've heard some people say Mars is exalted in Capricorn, so the two malefic planets it
right,
could be. And that very sacrifice is perpetuated and repeated daily in Catholic churches in Christian churches
right.
throughout the world. How
Well,
sick!
you know that the Jews still do that, right? You know they transfer demons into chickens and then they kill them. I don't know if you knew
And
about that.
they twirl them around over their heads and then they throw them in the
Yeah,
streets after. It's total animal
yeah,
cruelty.
yeah. But it's interesting though because the Bible is also anatomical. Okay, if you think about it, you have Jesus. You have the I don't know if you've ever heard this, but you have the 33 vertebrae of the spine. That's referred to as Jacob's ladder. Christ means oil in Greek. Okay, and the ancients knew that when you they wrote in Hebrew, right? They read in Hebrew, but only intellects spoke and read in Greek at the time. Okay, so Christ needs oil. So the sacred oil climbs up the spine or Jacob's ladder, where it lands into your pineal gland and it explodes, and that's your resurrection. That's an anatomical way of understanding the Bible. Jesus is crucified between two thieves. Those are the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. Right in the middle is your pineal gland.
Um, this I came to on my own. In the church, the 33rd Sunday is the last Sunday in ordinary time. The next Sunday is a celebration of Christ the King because the crown chakra is opened up
Right?
of 1,000 petaled lotus leaf, which is in reference to 1,000 rays of light, which they use in masonry. George Bush Sr. used it 100 times in his speeches.
Right. Now, have you heard me or Santos talk about what the 144,000 are? Or have you
All
heard
the
that
all the
before?
pe- all the petals on the leaves of the chakras
Correct. When you
together.
add them up. Yes. Correct.
Um, the number 40 as a significant number, I've come to two things. One is the 33 vertebrae on our spine, together with the 7 chakras.
There we go.
The 7 rungs on the ladder that you'll see often on Masonic drawing boards, giving us our 40.
Right.
Another version is in Kabbalah on their tree of life. There's 10 Sephirot. Never 9 and not 11. There's a reference to 9/11, which is a total Kabbalist, dark Kabbalist.
Right.
We forget Freemasonry is built on Jewish myth too. Hiram Abiff built a temple for Solomon. It's like the king of Israel, a fictional character. Based on, there's a Noahide step that you take into Freemasonry. I talked to a 32nd degree Freemason not too long ago. He knows nothing about astrology. When it's all riddled,
you're talking to one right. You're talking to one right now.
Really? So then you're one of the few. Did they teach you that in your lodges?
I'm a 3rd degree, and when I talk about my stuff, I blow them away.
They like it though.
They like it though. Yeah. I mean, as far as I understand, in the Scottish Rite, which is where you get your 32nd degree, that's where you go from the 3rd degree up to the 32nd degree. None of them talk about this. I'm actually giving a lecture on my work. One of the PowerPoints, you saw the 3 beards one, but I've since expanded it because I'm always adding and tweaking it a little bit and giving it 100% and trying to get that perfect video to share with people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm doing that for the Grand Lodge in Manhattan. June 30th.
I was born in Manhattan.
Were you?
In the same hospital on the same day, October 30th, 1981, as Ivanka Trump, oddly enough.
Nice.
And I have a low-key crush on her. Not a fan of Donald.
Yeah. But, I think Donald has a crush on her, too.
Yeah, that's very obvious and weird as shit. Yeah, so I think that's obvious.
Well, what do you think's going to happen when you stick your dick in a supermodel?
I don't know.
What do you think your children are going to look like, you know?
I think that they were pushing for Jared Kushner to be the Moshiach. He's bringing peace in the Middle East.
Yeah. You know what? As a former priest, let me ask you a question, because I always ask.
I was never ordained a priest. I went through the seminary, but I got out without being ordained a priest.
I thought you said you have a master's in theo.
And then when I left the seminary, I went as just a lay person and did a master's in theology on my own. Gotcha. And then I worked in the Catholic Church as a director of faith formation, religious education, initiation. So I initiated children, adults into the mysteries. It's very much built on mystery school stuff.
Right. So I guess my question to you would be, because I always reference the Catechism 2116 that talks about tarot reading, astrology, and all that being, from the devil. Why is it so hard for people to break away from the literal interpretation? Here's what I can't understand, okay? The Christians literally believe, and most of them are rational people. And then you look at people like Ben Carson, who talks about, like, the pyramids being where, like, the grain was stored and this and that. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? And then, but basically what I'm talking about is the Catholic Catechism, right? Christians would literally believe that God whispered into a 14-year-old girl's ear and got her pregnant, and believe that's like a way of how things work over astrology. It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy to me.
I mean, they had me hoodwinked, and I was
the fear of hell. Is it fear of hell? That's a very big motivation.
Yeah, and they use that. I had some type of a mystical experience like that in an environment that was surrounded by Christian people, and so they put it into a Christian context. Like, well, you know why you had that experience of kind of being reborn is because Jesus suffered on the cross and died for your sins and resurrected, and so that's why that happened. And then in school, I wanted to study what happened, so I was into studying the mystical elements of the religions and doing comparative and comparison.
So would you say more of a Christian mysticism kind of thing?
Well, when I was in school, that's what I was studying. I did my master's thesis on Karl Rahner, Jesuit priest's anonymous Christian, because he had this theological view of salvation outside of the physical church. So you could be not baptized or gone through the sacraments of the Catholic Church and still be saved and not go to hell.
Yeah.
Because I had a hard time. I'm like, well, if there's a loving God, how is he sending people to hell for who just grew up in a different culture, you know?
Right.
I had a hard time with that. So that was me trying to work that out then. I did my undergraduate degree in religious studies in a secular university, my master's in a Catholic one. And in my undergrad, I got introduced to philosophy of religion, sociology, psychology of religion, and world religions. And I'm glad I had that going. But even when I was there, I was very much a gung-ho Catholic, like evangelical. I was, and I really wasn't raised with much religiosity. We went to church and everything, but we never talked about it much.
Right.
But so that was funny. So that I was like, I was like debating with my professors about like how like the church was good, and then they make a full circle around like, oh no, the church was fucked up.
Yeah.
Responsible for
Did they ever talk to you about a priest named Alberto Rivera?
He was like a revolutionary type communist.
Is that what they told you about him?
Did he start Opus Dei?
No,
No, remind me again. He was
so he's in the last century. He died a little while ago. Alberto Rivera was a high-ranking priest that made his way up into the church, and
was he a Jesuit?
He was a Jesuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Jesuit.
He was the Black Pope.
No, the Black Pope is Alberto Rivera. No, not Alberto Rivera. The Black Pope is I can't remember his name right now, but yeah.
Whoever the Jesuits are. Again.
Yeah, so he's climbing the ranks from the Jesuits, and then he just abruptly leaves. And he starts talking about how he was told by one of the higher-ups the story of how Catholics started Islam. I don't know if any of this rings a bell or if any of this was ever taught to you.
Well, Khadijah, she was a nun who got sent out to go get Muhammad, who I guess was like a charismatic kind of a military leader.
Right, but it basically says that the reason they did this is because the Catholics wanted to reclaim Jerusalem from the Jews, but they couldn't do it. So what they did was they pushed and they started Islam.
So the Jews were in charge of Jerusalem when Islam was created?
We're talking like we're talking in like the 600s, 700s.
Yeah.
Yeah, 600s, 700s. The Jews were in charge of it. The Catholics wanted it. And so what they did was they created a religion to basically fight for them. Islam became too powerful, and they said they weren't going to do it. They wanted it for themselves. But there's plenty of pictures of like Pope John Paul kissing the Quran. There's plenty of them meeting them. You know, it's all incestual.
And they do have in their eschatological belief that Isa is what they call Jesus will return in this.
He will lead the battle. Basically, he's a prophet.
Yeah, but why? If it was created with the Catholic Church, why wouldn't they have that same? It's more of an Arian kind of view of Jesus than a Catholic Roman view of Jesus, or even Orthodox.
Well, they added their own thing. But if you've ever seen my work on the Quran, it's all astrotheological. Also, remember.
I think that Christianity was created by Hellenized Jews to be a controlled opposition, to keep them from assimilating, to fulfill the role as the persecutor, which again keeps them able to play a victim card very well. And then I think Islam too was created by Jewishness mostly. I mean, they have the whole Jewish scriptures. They just believe they're the son of Ishmael instead of Jacob.
Right.
And I think to control, to war against the Christians. And then they just sit in the backdrop. They're still the chosen people. And they've got everybody worshiping their God and abandoning theirs. Everybody theologically conquered.
There's really nothing more egotistical than to sit there and say you're the chosen people.
It's legit racial supremacy, and that somehow if you talk about it, then you get labeled anti-Semite. Like, no,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm better than anybody. It's this whole they do.
Yeah. I was raised in a very conservative Jewish household. Very
Yeah,
conservative.
I,
And I never took to it. I never took to it. I was always looking for answers. And then when I came across Jordan and Santos, I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do.
good for
And then
you.
I just found a way to commercialize it. Not so much commercialize it, but I found a way to kind of break people in softly through my fiction series,
I like
because
that.
I drop a lot of knowledge in there, and people buy into it because they're like, oh, this is a story, and little do they know,
You're,
they're learning all this forbidden knowledge.
yeah, I think they kept
You
this
know,
knowledge orally transmitted. The Talmud is the oral kind of tradition, and then in secret societies where they initiate you and you have to go through certain tests to prove your loyalty or whatnot before they give you this knowledge and information.
right?
And so that's with this whole advent of an Aquarian age type thing with the information sharing that's allowed through technology. I think this is a great way to break people out of this literal interpretation of
Right.
these scriptures, which has somebody as chosen or saved and another as damned or a
Right.
Gentile goy.
You even have the Catholics going to war with the Protestants. Do you know how many Catholics I talk to and they go, that's a Protestant thought. That's a Protestant thought.
Yeah, my homeland of Ireland got totally divided by like Protestants versus Christians. So sad.
Yeah.
Oh man, I thought my mother comes from. She's half Irish, half Polish, and we thought that the Polish side of her might have been Jewish. And it's still a
Right.
possibility, but we did some. I did a DNA test, and nothing came back from the Holy Land. But I think if you were to test genetically lots of Ashkenazi Jews, you would find that it doesn't go back to the Holy Land either. There was a
Um,
there was a big Rebbe who was a sage, and he kind of came up with the idea of salvation through sin. Robert Sepper, Sepehr, did a book on it called 1666, which is the
is
year.
Robert the autistic guy?
No, but he's a little bit weird. He might be, but he does some great documentaries, and he goes into a lot of working the chrism, the
Yeah.
the virile energy. He speaks about virile and chi, and in
It's syncretism, is what it's called. That's what you got to be. You have to be a syncretist in order to put together everything.
yeah, in Judaism they refer to
Yeah.
it as Shekinah, and Shekinah is the temple. It's the feminine aspect of God, the consort
Right.
of Yahweh. The first inscription that
Well,
we
I don't
have.
know if this is. I don't know if this is anti-Semitic or not, but I've seen a video where you know how when the Jews are at the Wailing Wall and they do this, they
They're,
kind of like,
they're humping the wall.
well, yeah, when they're basically doing that, they're copulating with the Shekinah.
Or when they read scripture, you see them going around like this. I mean,
Yeah.
you do want to, and that comes from the East. There are some stories from Hinduism that are very much alive and well in Jewish lore
Yeah,
and myth.
Abraham and Sarah goes back to Brahma and
And
Saraswati.
Saraswati, crazy. Also, I think Abram is like the ram, and Ab is like Abba, like the father ram, because
Yeah, that's what I say,
Aries
the
is
father Ram.
Aries the first sign of the
The
zodiac.
people, Aries, yeah, the people of Aries. Abraham,
You did
Abram.
you did a great job of taking us through in one of your interviews through the Gospel of Matthew and pointing out the astro.
Isn't that like that was one of the first things I decoded, and that's when I realized I had something.
That was great.
Isn't that incredible how I went line through line and just showed how it just dances around the zodiac? Not only that, but it makes patterns with connecting and opposing signs constantly.
That was beautiful. One thing I've come to lately is Orion and the
Right.
significance of Orion. Orion was Osiris in ancient Egypt, and he has a staff, and he comes out of the east and leads, I guess, the stars to the west, similar to the Exodus story with Moses and his staff.
Right.
And then below we have Ophiuchus holding the serpent bearer, which is Moses
Right. That's
lifts.
why when he has the staff, he throws it down and it becomes a snake.
And Jesus, similarly, well, he held up the serpent on the staff, and then you wouldn't suffer from the bite of scorpions. Ophiuchus is in the
Right.
Scorpio, next to the Scorpio constellation. And then
Correct.
we have Jesus, who says, in a similar fashion, so must I be lifted up on the cross for the salvation of many,
Right.
referring to Jesus as the serpent.
Right.
Um,
The interesting thing too, and I always point this out when I do this because people ask me questions, because there is mentions of Ophiuchus in the Bible. There is mentions of the serpent. There's two serpents in the constellations, the 88 that we know of. There's Hydra, which is known as the sea serpent,
in the
and
southern,
there's Ophiuchus,
in the
right, and then there's Ophiuchus, which is known as the serpent bearer.
and then
Now that is,
Draco, I guess, is kind of a serpent or dragon.
yeah, Draco is the dragon. Well, that's what I talk about in Revelation 12, the lady with the dragon.
You know something interesting? How our pole star now is Polaris, but in the
Right.
future, like back in Egypt, it was Draco, and so in the king's chamber was pointed towards Draco. But now it's moving. The pole star in a couple of hundreds of years will move to Vega, Vega, which means
Right.
haven. Which
Nice.
I think that's where we're heading to. Let's hope we get there.
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to share with you, which I came upon my own, I haven't found it anywhere else, is that Osiris, he is Orion, and he goes into a tomb and goes down the river, which is the Milky Way. Whenever there's a river, it almost refers to the Milky Way always. Or Eridanus, which is where we get Jordan from, the River Jordan.
Right.
And then
Well, in the Egyptian time, wasn't it referenced as wasn't it Nut?
Right.
In you have the hieroglyphs. You have the blue lady with the stars over her going like this over the people.
Yeah.
And that just basically shows the Milky Way. I'm sorry, I'll let you continue.
No, that's exactly true. Yeah. And so so we have Osiris in his tomb going across the heavens. Behind him, we have the brightest star in the night sky, Sirius, who is Isis. And then behind her is Nephthys, who is Procyon, the lesser dog. It's not as bright, and she was called the blurry-eyed one. And Isis and Nephthys, they both blink as if they're crying. And it is the two Marys weeping at the tomb of Jesus,
Right.
referring back to the two, Nephthys and Isis, mourning after Osiris, which also goes to Tammuz, an earlier Sumerian Babylonian myth of, in the Bible, they talk about, I think it was Paul, who I'm not even sure if existed, who talks about them weeping after Tammuz, like the pagans. But then we have, in Masonry, they refer to Hiram Abiff and even each other as sons of a widow, referring again to Isis, who is Sirius. And what they do is sacrifice the divine feminine. And when you brought up that in a video that I just watched about 9/11, hopefully this video won't get taken down for talking about it, how they kept on mentioning that this dog Sirius survived, and like weirdly,
No, it died. It died.
Oh, it did. It die.
It died. It was the only dog they mentioned by name. It's a police dog.
It's the sacrifice of the sacred feminine, which is Pisces was a feminine sign. Ideally, we'd celebrate the divine feminine in the Piscean age. Instead,
Well, it's a soft, mutable water sign. Of course it is.
One thing that really helped me a lot is the 4 cardinal directions, each one with a cardinal sign. The first season is fire. The second one, earth, starting with Cancer. And then the third one, air, which is why we have Scorpio also as an eagle. And then the last one is water. So Pisces is a water sign in the water season. And that's why we have the water bearer and we have the sea goat as the 3 signs, because they have to have that reference to water because they're in the water section of the year.
Right. Well, they talk about it in the Bible. They talk about God divide or Genesis. What was it? Genesis 1:14. God says He divided the waters from the water.
That the heavens are like water. They thought it was water.
Right.
But
But
that's what that.
it's also you have the two water signs. You have Aquarius and Pisces.
And you have Argo, the ship, which was turned into Noah's Ark, which is a boat in the southern heaven.
Right.
Also, one thing, Arthurian lore based off of Arcturus. The name Arcturus comes from Arthur, or Arthur comes from Arcturus, and he's above the zodiacal wheel of the 12 constellations, and that's why we have Arthur and his knights of the 12 knights of the Round Table.
Yep.
We also have.
They're all the same story. It's the greatest story ever told. It's the only story ever told. If you've ever heard Santos go into all the metaphors for all the stories, I saw him recently talk about one, Pinocchio. Pinocchio is the story about it's two words in Italian. It's pine, which means pineal gland, and occhio, which means eye. So it's the pineal eye.
Oh,
so
damn.
He's talking about how you have to become a good boy. You can't tell a lie. Your nose can't get big, and he goes into how this applies to the zodiac. I'm actually having a podcast with him on Saturday night. It's my first podcast with him since I started teaching at his academy.
I hope the nose getting bigger thing isn't an anti-Semitic reference. Oh, brother, it's so good to talk to you, man. You know, we should try to do this. We were almost on for an hour, and I don't want to make it too long so that people won't watch. But I would like to do this as a scheduled thing every so often. I think people would enjoy it.
You got my number. All you got to do is hit me up and just say I've got something new to talk about.
One thing I put together on my own, Paul Bunyan and his axe is Orion constellation, and then his bull, his best friend, is Orion's the Taurus constellation.
You know, it's funny because when I talk to Christians after they see my work, I go to them. I go, when I talk to you, I feel like I'm in ancient Greece trying to explain to people that Zeus isn't real.
Have they called you the Antichrist yet? I got that one recently. They thought I was the priest of the new age one world religion that's trying to come. I'm like, no, it's the Judeo-Christian faith run from Israel will be the one world religion.
So when I discovered this stuff and I wasn't religious, it blew my mind. It turned my world upside down. I can't imagine. These people are not built to be able to handle this.
Yeah, start studying astrology more and start looking at your chart and what the stars are doing. I think you'll really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I have an astrologer that I use. I have my 7th book is coming out. Okay, it's with my publisher. They're just editing it. It's going to come out in like a month and a half or so, and I'm starting to write the 8th book. I just wrote 3 chapters today. I just started it today. And they also have my first kids astrology book.
Get out of here!
That I did with my astrologer. It's called A is for Aries, and it'll be coming out next month.
I love it. Oh, brother, I'm so proud of you, man. You're doing a great job of getting the word out. I love your ability to reach out to others and to connect. That's very Librarian of you.
Yeah, it is.
From Aries to Libra, and from Libra to Aries, library. And we have the book of life and the book of death. Life, it would be Aries to Libra, and then from Libra.
Do you want me to send you? What I usually do with people is when they follow me or friend me on social media, I usually have a quick conversation with them. Sometimes they tell me they want to get the book, so we set that up. But what I usually do is send them all my videos that I do, and it's basically my best video that I've done on every topic. I can send you my list when we get off. If you want, then you can just watch, if you're interested in seeing how it's in the Quran or how it's in the Book of the Dead or the Emerald Tablets, which is more quantum physics than anything, but it's still there. If you're interested, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'll look through the topics that I'm not familiar with, and then I love to see them. I've watched pretty much every video that Santos Bonacci has done, so that, and then on my own, I've put together a lot, and I could also share with you some text I come across that the Golden Bough is one. That's a good one. Yeah. Some good astrotheological references. This guy I came across recently, Marty Leeds. I've known about him for a while,
Yeah, I've
but
heard of him. I've heard of
he
him.
just came across some info, and he broke down the Gospel of Mark and the astrotheology in there, and that I just came across that last week. I'm like, man, I'm still learning new stuff every day. I love it. I wish I could live forever and just keep on learning and learning.
That's how I feel. Um, but yeah, I would definitely. You know what I'd like to? I'm not going to say use you for, but I'd like to lean on you for a little bit. When I'm writing my books and stuff, and I'm going to insert an astrotheological passage in the Bible, I would like to send you the passage or tell you which passage it is, and you tell me how the church would interpret it.
You know, in the Catholic Bibles that they have, which is like the NVST, I believe, they do a lot of just in the bottom of subtitles or whatever in those annotations, you could find they do a pretty good job of it. If you find a Catholic Study Bible,
Yeah.
they do a pretty good job. And then whenever there's an obvious astrotheological thing, they have to fumble around it, like in Job, where like, can you bring forth, can you loosen the belt of Orion? Can you,
Yeah.
the Pleiades?
Yeah.
The Pleiades, Subaru. You know, on Subaru, you
I
have
believe. I believe the actual word for that is what is the word for that? It's called apologetics, right?
yeah, they're always apologizing for being for hiding the real knowledge from people. Oh, brother Micah, so good to talk to you, man. We'll have to. I definitely want to do this again because I know I could already think of lots of other things I want to talk about, and I know when I hang up with you, that there's gonna be a million things like, oh, I wish I would have asked him about that. So, what I'll do is I'll
Okay.
jot those down. I think this was a good intro to my audience on Aquarian TV, and then also Wake Movement is another channel that I do more kind of conspiratorial things, and like I break down like Super Bowl halftime performances. A video that got to like 70,000 views or 60 or something, and so I have more followers on that one. Aquarian TV is how I'm trying to do spirituality. Like
Right.
just because I came to all this knowledge, like it's like, well, now what? Like I still believe in a spiritual life, and that it's
Right.
healthy. That religion can offer community building and support and solidarity. So what I'm doing with
That's
the
what it is. People who learn this kind of stuff, this kind of science, they're like missionaries. They're driven to teach to people,
yeah,
and you just have to find your medium.
and so I'm trying to do it through using the church because I went to be a freaking priest, so I'm using that form and that structure to
Right.
and that look to get this out. I'm trying to replace the blood sacrifice of the mass with what I call the sacrament of the Aquarian, which is pouring water into a vessel and drinking it and washing
Right.
away this fucking dumb shit. The age of deception, Pisces, and the age of knowledge. The motto of Aquarius is "I know," and so I'm hoping that this knowledge, this gnosis, can really free us from these chains of bondage. Thank you for doing such a great job and carrying that mission along, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So we'll talk soon. Okay.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Well, that was great. What did you think?